As has been said already, what's happening in B6 must be understood within a wider pattern of corporate capture, reshaping public life. Every day, our society is being consumed by unfettered corporate greed, a greed that refuses to distinguish between our lives and their profit, a greed that finds new ways to commodify our collective survival, only to sell it back to us as EDI favors, corporate responsibility initiatives, and philanthropic benevolence. A greed that makes no distinction between what is sacred and what is scalable, just as the line between what is just and just enough is intentionally blurred. We live in a society that reduces us to our economic functions, consumers, tenants, service users, instead of recognizing us as whole, complex human beings that are shaped by our families, our cultures, and our community. And now our schools and colleges, once places that nurtured talent and ambition, risk becoming vanity projects for big businesses to secure their bottom lines and turn out future employees. Corporate greed essentially trades humanity for profit and treats ethics like an inconvenience. Disinterested in the genocides that sponsor and force traumatized children to our British shores. Disinterested in the estates they demolish and prop up another Costa that nobody asks for. And disinterested in the lifelines they cut through another sixth-form merger. Corporate greed sees our most basic needs as market opportunities. The provision of food is no longer about nutrition, but about controlling the agricultural supply chain. Public health. Healthcare is no longer about public health, but about the commercialization of treatment. And education is no longer about human development and expanding opportunity, but about serving market incentives of private investors who frame students and staff alike as numbers on a spreadsheet, rather than living, breathing custodians of our future. Corporate greed unfolds like a game of Monopoly, played between politicians and our private sector. Essential public services are treated as real estate, bought and sold to strengthen business portfolios, with little regard for the real people displaced in the process. The elites participating often don't know what it means to rely on further education for social mobility. They don't know what it's like to be without a safety net when the invisible hand shifts its commercial priorities, reshaping and restricting curriculums in ways that disproportionately disadvantage global majority students, forcing schools to choose between staying open and staying accountable. But just like schools, our society cannot serve two masters. To understand how corporate greed operates, we must first name the ideologies that permit it in the first place: capitalism and neoliberalism. And as you can probably tell, I'm not a fan of either. Both in different ways suggest that business-led growth is the engine of prosperity, and that the accumulation of wealth deserves more political protection than the universal and democratic rights of the masses. Capitalism sets the stage for a cultural obsession with profit as the ultimate marker of success and worthiness. It becomes so entrenched in our collective psyche that we mistake it for just life. And what is normalized begins to feel natural, and what feels natural goes unchallenged. Critiquing capitalism becomes reframed as criticizing ambition itself, breeding competitiveness amongst neighbors and demonizing the values that do not worship profit. And this profit in turn enables individuals and corporations to buy more land and resources, and ultimately more influence and power. The cycle continues. Neoliberalism builds on this by asserting that markets are better at organizing our society than democratically elected governments or our community wisdom. It suggests that basic human provisions like food, shelter, and education should be determined by how much people are willing to pay and delivered in the cheapest, no, they would say the most efficient way possible. And under this logic, even our human rights are effectively allocated to the highest bidder. And I'm absolutely biased, of course, and if you look in the Oxford Dictionary, you will not see these definitions. But if we look around us at how the world operates, inequity and inequality appear to be the only guarantees under a system where privilege, power, and politics set the rules of the game. Both ideologies exploit our most primitive instincts to survive and to belong, while simultaneously eroding the social and economic fabric we rely on for security. Because after all, a weakened society is much easier to control. The Microscope to Society reports highlight how financial pressures, short-term thinking, and corporate takeover brought about a merger that failed to center the needs of the staff and the students, breaking the trust between the community and the institution in the process. And unfortunately, like it's already been said, this is not unique to B6. It reflects a broader pattern that has shaped modern Britain since the 80s and 90s, when successive governments embraced the idea that the public sector is inherently inefficient, and must be managed like a business to drive improvement and innovation. Improvements we are still yet to see. And take a look at private prisons. Many are incentivized to generate profit through government contracts that pay a fixed daily rate for keeping prisons full. These giant firms cut costs and increase revenue by relying on exploitative labor, while overcrowded facilities overwhelm the underpaid and underexperienced staff who are ill-equipped to meet the complex needs of society's most vulnerable populations they supervise. And this in turn obviously undermines the morale and the stability needed to keep prisoners safe or provide the rehabilitation that they've been promised under law. When those in power prioritize metrics, turnover, and market share, who safeguards the physical and mental and emotional well-being of these prisoners? Who advocates to ensure that they have access to nutritious meals, qualifications, and clean clothes? If the corporatization in schools is failing students and staff, what deeper injustice is being inflicted on those we have collectively discarded? And it's the same pattern that exists within the NHS. Corporate style management prioritizes financial and performance targets over quality care that's delivered to patients. Racialized communities are excluded from the strategic decisions that shape their outcomes, contributing to persistent health inequalities, including the reality that Black women are 5 times more likely to die in childbirth than their white counterparts. Not because they do not speak up, but because their needs are sidelined in rooms where power is concentrated in the hands of executive boards detached from the realities of underrepresented communities. Meanwhile, staff face rising workloads, burnout, and are pressured to meet managerial priorities over professional judgment. And here's the conclusion. Now that we have looked across society at just some examples of how state-sanctioned harm operates as a political project that humanizes profit and alienates people, I hope we can begin to understand that the unjust situation B6 is put in is entirely unfair. And as evidence in the report, it's clear that the former B6 college was a local treasure, a place that met students where they were, offered second chances and nurtured confidence and built community trust. It operated on the simple belief that a well-rounded, quality education is not the luxury reserved for the winners of Britain's postcode lottery, but a fundamental right for everyone, regardless of your social class, your race, your gender, your ability, sexual orientation, or citizenship status. B6 understood this, and it was effectively punished for refusing to leave anyone behind. Underfunded does not mean underperforming. Mergers do not automatically mean progress. And when education is forced to serve the market before it serves the community, it fails. Not just its students, but an entire generation whose diverse needs will go unmet. And I recently heard someone argue that young people are the most oppressed group in society. And I believe it's true. We have forgotten our role to protect them, whether that's in the streets, in their homes, or in the classrooms, whether from police, austerity, or corporate greed. So today, As you've listened to the voices and the testimonies in the report, ask yourself one simple question. Who does education really belong to? Thank you.